Once upon a time, there was a mermaid and a Selkie. They had known each other all their lives and were the closest of friends. When they had first met, the mermaid had a fishtail and a human torso, but the Selkie resembled only a seal. Mermaids had a way of knowing other magical creatures, however, so they recognized one another. They would play for hours and hours, passing their immortal lives together. As they grew, soon came the time for them to walk among the humans. Mermaids and Selkies could only go up at night, and only after they came of age. The mermaid was excited and also a little nervous. She would not change so significantly. She would merely trade in her tail for legs, but she had only known her Selkie friend as a seal. She wondered what she would look like when they went above the shore. The two of them received their family's blessings as they traveled up the waters and onto the nearby beach. As the mermaid left the ocean and her scales dried up, her tail split in two and she found herself with a pair of legs. Then she turned to watch her friend transform. The Selkie took much longer than the mermaid. She drew from her body, as though her leather pelt was only a coat to be removed. Slowly but surely, a young woman pulled out. The mermaid gasped as her friend took her first steps. She was a lovely sight to behold. The mermaid soon rose up herself, and the two walked hand in hand into the town. They did not notice the strange looks everyone gave them. They only saw the wonders of the upper world. They saw the plants and animals. They saw the buildings and the automobiles. They saw sparkling jewelry, which the Selkie especially liked. They saw the art all around them, on the walls and on the windows. They could smell the food and hear the music. It was truly a wonder to behold, but it was not quite as wondrous, the mermaid thought, as seeing her friend like this for the first time. She wondered what life would be like for them after this day, when they returned to the waters, and the mermaid saw her Selkie friend as only a seal once again. She would forever think of the girl lost inside. She would remember her beautiful eyes and her soft hair. She would remember her lovely voice when she laughed. The mermaid had not realized she could feel this way about another person before. The night went by too quickly as the sun began to rise. The two of them wished to sit on the beach and watch as it ascended, but they knew that there were risks to being out once night ended. She wondered if the two of them would ever return to land, even though she knew the consequences of that. If a mermaid left the sea too often, her tail would remain as legs permanently. But Selkies needed to leave the water every so often once they came of age, or they would forget they were magical creatures and become seals forever. The two of them made their way back to the sea. The mermaid simply had to step inside the waters for her tail to reappear, but the Selkie again took much longer. She pulled her leather pelt over her head, and the transformation began to take place. The mermaid watched as her friend resumed her usual form. Once they were both home, their families asked them about the trip. The mermaid was asked what she saw on land, but she found that she could not recall anything specific. She only remembered the Selkie's beautiful face. The next day started off typical enough for the pair. They woke up, ate breakfast, and begun their games. The mermaid was having fun, but there was something different in the way she felt. She and her Selkie friend were playing as they always had when they were children, but the mermaid found that she still could not stop thinking about the beautiful woman who was underneath the leather pelt. The mermaid wondered if she might sneak away once in a while when her friend went above the sea. It surely could not hurt to do so for just a short while, especially if it meant that she could walk hand in hand with her lovely friend again. The next time the Selkie needed to leave the waters, the mermaid did exactly that. Her friend was more than willing to keep the secret. Sure enough, as the two left the shallows, the mermaid found herself with two legs and waited until her friend stood up to join her. She was even lovelier than the mermaid had remembered. They took one another's hand and walked into town. Once again, they did not mind the looks they received from the humans around them. The Selkie had eyes for everything, and the mermaid had eyes only for her friend. And the mermaid felt that this was the happiest she had ever been in her life, so much so that when the sun began to rise, she could feel her heart break. If only there was a way to have more time. "Let us stay," she told her friend before they were able to step into the ocean's waters once more. "We can watch the sunrise and go back in the morning. The Selkie was hesitant, but in the end, she agreed. They did indeed watch the sun come up, and it was a lovely time. As the morning shifted into day, however, the mermaid found herself looking less at the sky and more at her friend. She was by far the beautiful sight to behold, and the mermaid did not want to miss a second of it. There was a twisting inside where her heart was, a mixture of anguish and serenity. She was happy to be by the Selkie's side, but a part of her felt as though it would never be the same again. All she wanted was to lie here forever, but the reality was that she could not, and this thought broke her heart. Yes, that was it. Her heart was broken, for she was in love with her best friend. Soon the Selkie fell asleep, and the mermaid had an idea. She picked up her friend's leather pelt and ran into town. She hid it in a place where she would not forget, but where no one would look. Then she returned to the beach and slept. At nightfall, the mermaid was awoken by sobbing. She sat up to see that her friend was crying. When she asked what was wrong, the Selkie stammered on about her missing pelt. "Oh," the mermaid replied, suddenly feeling guilty. She didn't know what she had been thinking, but somehow it hadn't crossed her mind how the decision would impact her friend's feelings. She had just wanted a little more time. We shall go and look for it together. It must have been the humans. That's the only explanation." The Selkie nodded, but tears still fell from her eyes. "We must hurry, for your sake too." "Pardon? If we don't return to the sea soon, you'll also be trapped inside this human body forever." Trapped. That had been the word she used. Did she really feel as though these forms were the enemy? The mermaid had felt that for the first time in their lives, she and her friend were on equal footing. Had she been mistaken? Did the Selkie truly not feel the same way she did? The mermaid felt her heart break all over again. Then she realized that there was no point in hiding the truth. She needed to say what was on her mind now, or risk losing her friend forever. "What if," she started, "that wasn't the worst thing?" "What are you talking about?" "I mean, what if we stayed as humans? Do we not have fun up here?" The Selkie shook her head. "It's not about that. The land is not our home." "What if I want it to be my home?" "Don't be silly. Why would you ever want that?" "Because." The mermaid took a step into the waters. The ocean pulled around her ankles, and yet there remained feet. "It means that I can stay here with you." The Selkie had no words. She stood there for a time, until tears ran down her cheeks. The mermaid ran to her side and wrapped her arms around her friend. The Selkie went on. "You should never have even come with me. It's dangerous. But I wanted you to come with me. We do everything together. I wanted you to see me as I am, the girl underneath the sill pelt." At her words, the mermaid realized she had been wrong about the situation. This was all new to both of them, and so sudden. They had been friends their whole lives, and now she didn't have the words to describe the way love crept up on her. But going behind the Selkie's back wasn't the answer. Now it was too late. The sun had peaked up, and the mermaid would never be able to return to the sea again. She could not condemn her friend to the same fate. How were they going to make this work? What do we do now?" she asked. The Selkie smiled and offered her hand. "We take it one step at a time." The two of them walked back into town, and the mermaid showed where she had hidden the leather pelt. Then they rushed back to the sea, but the Selkie did not immediately transform. Instead, she looked back up at her friend. "You know I will return to you?" she asked. The mermaid nodded. "Yes, I do." The Selkie smiled. Then, while she had the time to, she leaned forward so the two of them could share a kiss. It was small and short, neither of them knew what to do. But it was a first kiss, and it was all theirs. Then the mermaid watched as the Selkie placed her pelt back over her body and rejoined the ocean in her seal form. She bobbed around in the shallows for a time, before disappearing beneath the waters. Now there was nothing left to do for the mermaid except to wait until the love of her life returned. In the meantime, she created a home of the island. She learned the language and made friends. There were struggles, but she managed to get by. Taking notice of her beauty, many men came to court her, but she always refused. Even when they offered her a life of comfort, she turned them down. They never understood why. They came up with a theory that she once had a beloved, but he had died at sea. Why else would she wait by the shores, night after night, looking out as though she was waiting for someone to return?